The void between stars was supposed to be peaceful. That's what they always told us in training. The silence will center you, they said. You'll find clarity. What they never mentioned was how that same silence becomes a prison when you're left to die in it. My oxygen readout blinked at 12%. Another lie from military engineering, the conservative estimate they promised. At 12%. I should have had 3 hours left. The indicator was already flashing red. I'd be lucky to get 60 minutes. I drifted through the orbital shadows of Zeta 9, my damaged EVA suit, tumbling in lazy rotation. Each turn brought the devastated outpost back into view, the place where, 6 hours earlier, my entire squadron had been stationed. Now it was just a blackened hull. Occasional sparks from severed power conduits, the only sign that humans had ever inhabited it. Sergeant Mara Rook Reyes, Imperial Intelligence Division, floating corpse to be. That's how my epitaph would read, if anyone bothered to write one. The rebellion's surprise attack had been devastatingly effective. No distress signals got out. No evacuation pods launched. Just me, blown clear during the initial explosion, watching from afar as everyone I knew died. I adjusted my comms again, hoping to catch even a whisper of rescue chatter. Instead, static filled my helmet. The encrypted military bands were dead silent, as if the Empire had simply forgotten this sector existed. As if we had never mattered at all. The stars blurred as my eyes filled. I angrily blinked the tears away. Crying would fog my visor and waste precious moisture. Dying of thirst before suffocating seemed like adding insult to injury. I was about to switch off the comms to conserve the last dregs of power, when something cut through the static, a burst of coherent signal. I froze, hardly daring to breathe as I adjusted the frequency. Repeat. This is HMS Valor transmitting on all emergency channels. Responding to distress beacon, Echo 79er. Any survivors, please acknowledge. A ship. An actual Imperial ship. My heart hammered against my ribs as I fumbled with the transmitter. This is Sergeant Reyes. Imperial Intelligence, I'm reading you. Valor position is... I rattled off the coordinates as best I could determine them. EVA suit compromised. Oxygen critical. Please respond. Silence followed. Had I imagined it? Was oxygen deprivation already causing hallucinations? Then, copy that. Sergeant, we have your position. Hold tight. Retrieval in approximately 15 minutes. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by suspicion. No Imperial vessel had been scheduled for patrol in this quadrant for weeks. That was partly why the rebellion had chosen this moment to strike. And HMS Valor, I didn't recognize the designation. I tapped into my suit's pathetic excuse for a scanner. Nothing. Then, as I completed another slow rotation, I saw a pinprick of light moving against the starfield, growing steadily larger. The approaching vessel killed its running lights as it entered the shadow of Zeta 9's larger moon. But I'd seen enough to know it was military. The profile was unmistakable, a Hyperion-class warship, supposedly decommissioned 2 years ago after the Proxima Centauri Accords. What was a mothballed warship doing out here, responding to a disaster no one should have known about yet? I didn't have long to contemplate this mystery. The ship, the Valor, slid silently into position about 50 meters from my location. Up close, I could see the vessel had been modified extensively from standard Imperial design. The hull was scarred with what looked like recent battle damage, and identifying markings had been removed or painted over. Only the name remained, emblazoned across the bow in stark white letters, HMS Valor. A small hatch opened in the ship's side. A figure in a maneuvering unit emerged, propelling steadily toward me. Sergeant Reyes. The voice in my comms was female, authoritative. I'm Chief Petty Officer Lin. Let's get you aboard before that suit gives out completely. I had no choice but to trust her. My oxygen readout now showed 8%, and the cold had seeped into my bones. I let Officer Lin attach a tether to my suit and tow me toward the waiting ship. The rest of my unit, I managed through chattering teeth. Did anyone else? You're the only life sign we detected, Lynn replied, her voice carefully neutral. I'm sorry. As we approached the airlock, I caught a glimpse of the Valor's interior through the open hatch. No Imperial insignia, no standard configurations. This was no longer an Imperial vessel, whatever its origins. Who are you people? I whispered. Lynn's response was drowned out by the hiss of the airlock cycling. The outer door sealed behind us, and atmosphere flooded the chamber. I felt the sudden weight of gravity plating activate as my feet touched the deck. Welcome aboard the Valor, Sergeant Reyes, Lynn said, removing her helmet to reveal a woman with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. Captain Ibarra will want to speak with you once you're stable. Ibarra. The name triggered something in my memory. Admiral Santiago Ibarra, dishonorably discharged 3 years ago after publicly condemning the Empire's tactics in the Orion conflict. A war hero turned dissident, rumored to have disappeared into exile. It seemed exile had taken an interesting form. This isn't a rescue ship, is it? I asked as Lynn helped me out of my damaged suit. She met my gaze evenly. That depends entirely on your definition of rescue, Sergeant, and on what you're willing to learn about who really left you to die out there. Thus began my second life, born in the silence of space, awakened by the roar of a warship that shouldn't exist, crewed by people who had every reason to let me die. I just didn't know why yet. Medical bay lights stung my eyes after hours in the dim confines of my EVA helmet. I lay on an examination table as a tall, thin man with a perpetual frown scanned me with outdated but functional medical equipment. Mild hypothermia, dehydration, early-stage hypoxia, and psychological trauma, he muttered, more to himself than to me. Nothing surprising given the circumstances. Are you actually a doctor? I asked, my voice rasping. My throat felt like sandpaper. He arched an eyebrow. Indeed I am. Dr. Emil Voss, formerly of the Imperial Medical Corps, currently ship's physician aboard this vessel of questionable legality. He handed me a hydration pouch. Drink slowly. I sipped the slightly sweet liquid, feeling it bring my parched tissues back to life. So you're all deserters. Such an ugly word. Dr. Voss checked a readout on his tablet. I prefer independently aligned former military personnel, though I suppose mutineers would be technically accurate in some cases. Before I could question him further, the medical bay door slid open. The woman who entered carried authority like a tangible force field around her. Medium height, weathered bronze skin, and black hair streaked with silver, pulled back in a tight bun. Her uniform bore no insignia, but I had no doubt this was Captain Ibarra, formerly Admiral Ibarra of the Imperial Fleet. Dr. Voss, is our guest stable? She asked, her voice carrying the crisp accent of Earth's southern hemisphere. Stable enough for conversation, Voss replied, though I'd recommend against any strenuous interrogations or existential revelations for at least a few hours. Ibarra's mouth quirked in what might have been amusement. Noted. She turned her full attention to me. Sergeant Reyes, I've reviewed your service record. Impressive. 8 years in intelligence, specializing in encryption and signals analysis. 3 commendations for valor under fire. Currently assigned to Outpost Zeta 9 as part of Operation Silent Vigil. She paused. Tell me, Sergeant, did they ever explain to you what you were actually guarding out here? I sat up straighter, military instincts kicking in despite my situation. Classified long-range sensor array, monitoring rebel movements along the Zeta corridor. Priority surveillance operation. Is that what they told you? Ibarra's expression remained neutral, but something flashed in her eyes. And did you ever wonder why a priority surveillance operation would be left without adequate defenses? Why reinforcements never arrived despite the increasing rebel activity in this sector? I had wondered. The question had gnawed at me for weeks as we filed report after report about suspicious movements, only to be met with formulaic acknowledgments and no additional support. We followed orders, I said, the words sounding hollow even to my own ears. Command assured us the outpost's secrecy was its best defense. Ibarra nodded, as if I'd confirmed something. Your outpost wasn't destroyed by rebels, Sergeant Reyes. I saw the attack, I protested. I was monitoring the perimeter when they hit us. You saw an attack, Ibarra corrected, carried out by unmarked ships using rebel signature protocols. She pulled a data tablet from her pocket and handed it to me. This was intercepted 3 days ago from Imperial Central Command. The document on screen bore the highest security classification I'd ever seen. Operation Silence, Phase 2, Implementation. My eyes widened as I scanned the contents, a directive authorizing the neutralization of all surveillance outposts in the Zeta sector, specifically including the elimination of all personnel to maintain operational security. This is, I couldn't find words. A death sentence, Ibarra finished for me. For you and every member of your unit. Signed by Colonel Victor Vance, Special Operations Command. I knew Vance by reputation, a coldly efficient officer who'd risen through the ranks by delivering results, regardless of the cost. I'd never met him personally, but his name carried weight in intelligence circles. Why would the Empire destroy its own outpost? My mind raced, trying to find an explanation that made sense. The data we were collecting was crucial for exposing a treaty violation that would have caused interstellar scandal. Ibarra cut in. Your sensors weren't just monitoring rebel movements. Sergeant, they were collecting evidence of illegal weapons testing in the Zeta Neutral Zone, testing conducted by Imperial forces under Vance's command. The room seemed to tilt around me. That's impossible. The Orion Accords explicitly prohibit. Indeed they do, which is why, when your outpost began picking up anomalous energy signatures consistent with prototype planet killer testing, the decision was made to eliminate the witnesses rather than abort the program. I stared at the document, the reality of it sinking in like a physical weight. My friends, my comrades executed by the very government we'd sworn to serve, and I'd survived by sheer accident, blown clear during the initial bombardment. Why are you telling me this? I finally asked, looking up at Ibarra. Why pick me up at all? I'm Imperial intelligence. By all rights, you should consider me an enemy. Ibarra's expression softened slightly. Because 8 years ago, I was where you are now. I discovered something I wasn't meant to know, and it shattered everything I believed about the Empire I served. I had to choose between comfortable lies and uncomfortable truth. She gestured around her. As you can see, I made my choice. What do you want from me? Initially, information about what your outpost had collected. But now that we have confirmation about Operation Silence, I'm offering you something else. She leaned forward. A chance to expose the truth, to ensure your comrades didn't die in vain. You want me to betray the Empire. The words should have tasted bitter, but somehow they didn't. The Empire already betrayed you. Sergeant, Ibarra's voice was quiet but intense. I'm offering you the chance to hold the true traitors accountable. I closed my eyes, seeing again the destruction of the outpost, the silent deaths of people I'd served with for months, people who'd trusted the chain of command with their lives, only to be sacrificed for political convenience. I'll need proof, I said finally. Not just this directive. Hard evidence of what was happening in the neutral zone. Ibarra smiled for the first time, a grim, determined expression. That's precisely what we're planning to acquire. The question is, are you with us? I thought of my oath to the Empire, of the years I'd dedicated to its service. Then, I thought of my friends, their lives snuffed out to protect criminals in positions of power. When do we start? The ship's briefing room was sparse but functional, like everything else aboard the Valor. 6 people gathered around a holographic display showing a section of the Zeta corridor. I recognized Chief Petty Officer Lin and Dr. Voss among them. along with Captain Ibarra. The others were introduced as Lieutenant Commander Nazari, Tactical Officer, Specialist Park, Communications, and Chief Engineer Okafor. An eclectic crew for a rogue warship, all former Imperial military, all with their own reasons for turning their backs on the Empire. I wondered what my own reason would officially be. Survivor of an Imperial purge seemed straightforward enough. Operation Silence has 3 phases, Ibarra explained, manipulating the display to highlight various locations. Phase 1 was the covert weapons testing in the neutral zone. Phase 2, the elimination of monitoring stations and witnesses, including your outpost, Sergeant Reyes. And Phase 3, I asked, the falsification of evidence to blame the destruction on rebel forces, justifying a full military response and annexation of the neutral zone. Ibarra expanded the map. They're building a case for war, using your deaths as the catalyst. The magnitude of the deception was staggering. You said you need evidence. What exactly are we looking for? Nazari, a compact man with a scar running from temple to jaw, pointed to 3 locations on the map. Each weapons test was monitored from multiple observation platforms. Your outpost was one. The others are automated relay stations here, and here. Manticore Station is our primary target, Ibarra continued. It's the collection point for all the data from the automated platforms. If we can access its central core, we'll have irrefutable proof of both the weapons tests and the conspiracy to cover them up. It'll be heavily guarded, Lin noted. After hitting Outpost Zeta 9, they'll be expecting someone to investigate. Which is why we need someone who can bypass their security protocols. Ibarra turned to me. Someone whose credentials are still active in the system. Understanding dawned. That's why you rescued me. You need my access codes. We rescued you because leaving Imperial personnel to die isn't our policy, Ibarra corrected firmly. But yes, your expertise would be invaluable for this mission. I studied the holographic display, identifying vulnerabilities in Manticore's defenses, almost by reflex. It was what I'd been trained to do, after all. Even with my codes, we'd need to physically access a terminal inside the station. Remote infiltration would trigger countermeasures. Hence our current heading. Engineer Okafor spoke up, her deep voice carrying a Northern African cadence. We're approaching Manticore under stealth protocols. ETA 14 hours. I raised an eyebrow. You're just going to fly up and dock with a high-security Imperial station? Not exactly. Nazari manipulated the display to show a detailed schematic of Manticore. We'll use a modified long-range shuttle, approaching during the station's maintenance cycle when their sensors are recalibrated. Your codes will get us through the initial security layer. After that, we improvise. We've done this before, Lin added with a hint of pride, though usually with less critical objectives. What happens after we get the data? I asked. The Empire controls all major communication networks, even with proof. How do you plan to distribute it? Specialist Park, who had been quiet until now, smiled thinly. That's my department. We've established connections with independent news outlets across 3 sectors. Once we have the evidence, we can broadcast it simultaneously through channels the Empire can't immediately shut down. And then, the question had been forming since I first agreed to help. Ibarra met my gaze steadily. Then, we deal with the consequences. If we succeed, the revelation will cause enormous political upheaval. The Interstellar Council will demand accountability. There will be investigations, tribunals, possibly even a restructuring of Imperial leadership. And if we fail, then we die, knowing we tried to do what's right. She answered simply, something your comrades were never given the chance to do. The room fell silent as her words sank in. These people, these traitors to the Empire, were risking everything to expose a truth that powerful people wanted buried. It was more courage than I'd seen in years of Imperial service. I need to prepare, I said, finally. If we're going to hack Manticore's systems, I'll need to review their latest security protocols. Ibarra nodded. Everything we have is at your disposal. Lieutenant Commander Nazari will brief you on the tactical plan once you're ready. As the meeting dispersed, Dr. Voss approached me. How are you processing all this? He asked quietly. Psychologically speaking, you've experienced severe trauma, followed by a complete paradigm shift in your understanding of reality. That's not insignificant. I considered the question honestly. I'm functioning. The mission gives me focus. And after the mission, I haven't thought that far ahead. Voss nodded, as if I'd confirmed a diagnosis. Few of us did, at first. Just remember that surviving isn't just about continuing to breathe. At some point, you'll need to decide what you're living for, not just what you're fighting against. With that cryptic advice, he left me staring at the holodisplay, the coordinates of Manticore Station glowing ominously against the backdrop of stars. 14 hours to prepare. 14 hours to decide if I was ready to officially become a traitor to the Empire I'd served my entire adult life. But as Captain Ibarra had pointed out, the Empire had betrayed me first. Sleep eluded me in the small cabin they'd assigned. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw the outpost exploding, imagined my comrades' final moments. Had they known what was happening? Had they realized they were being sacrificed by their own government? Unable to rest, I made my way to the ship's observation deck. The Valor was running dark, with minimal interior lighting, but stars blazed through the transparent viewport, painfully beautiful against the void. "Can't sleep," the voice startled me. Captain Ibarra sat in the shadows, a steaming cup in her hands. "No, sir, Captain. Just Ibarra is fine. We're not big on formalities here." She gestured to the seat across from her. "Join me. It's just tea. But Okafor brews it with some spice blend from her homeland. Helps quiet the mind." I sat, accepting the cup she poured from a small pot. The aroma was foreign but soothing. "How did you know?" I asked after a silence. "About Operation Silence, I mean." Ibarra gazed out at the stars. "We have sources within Imperial Command. People who haven't forgotten what the Empire was supposed to stand for." "And what was that exactly?" "Protection. Progress. The betterment of humanity across the stars." She sipped her tea. "Not empire building at any cost. Not weapons that can render planets uninhabitable. The planet killer technology, is it real? Very, based on gravitational manipulation, designed to destabilize a planet's core. The aftermath looks like a natural disaster, massive earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, plausible deniability for genocide." I shuddered. "And Colonel Vance is behind this?" "He's the operational commander, but the authorization comes from higher up. The Imperial War Council, at minimum." Ibarra studied me over the rim of her cup. "You've served in intelligence. You know how these things work. Compartmentalization, deniability. The people who give the orders rarely have to witness the consequences." I did know. I'd been part of that system, accepting without question that some information was need to know, that certain operations required secrecy, even from those carrying them out. "How do you do it?" I asked suddenly. "Turn your back on everything, start over." Ibarra's expression softened. "One day at a time. With people you trust." She gestured around her. "Everyone on this ship has made the same choice. We support each other through the doubt, the regret, the days when we wonder if we've made a terrible mistake." "And have you made a mistake?" "No." Her answer came without hesitation. "I've made many in my life, but leaving the Empire wasn't one of them. Neither was stealing this ship." A faint smile crossed her face. Though that part was certainly complicated. I found myself wanting to hear that story, but more pressing questions remained. "Tomorrow's mission, what are our real chances? Of getting the data better than even with your help? Of surviving afterward?" She shrugged. "Significantly lower. Manticore will have automated distress protocols. Even if we succeed, we'll have Imperial forces converging on our position within hours. Yet you're still going. Some truths are worth dying for. Sergeant Reyes, she finished her tea. But, if it helps, I don't actually intend for us to die. The Valor has outrun Imperial pursuit before. Mara, I said suddenly. My name is Mara. If we're going to risk our lives together tomorrow, you might as well use it. Ibarra nodded, acknowledging the small but significant shift. Santiago, then, though most of the crew just calls me Captain. How did you end up here, Santiago? The official story was that you retired after a disagreement about tactical deployments. The disagreement was my refusal to bombard civilian targets on Proxima Centauri 4. Her voice remained even, but I saw her knuckles whiten around her cup. When I threatened to go public, they offered me a choice honorable discharge with full pension and silence, or court-martial for insubordination. I took the former, used the resources to build a network of like-minded individuals, and eventually acquired this vessel when the need arose. Stole it, you mean? Liberated, she corrected with a hint of amusement. From a mothball fleet that was scheduled for scrap anyway. The Empire barely noticed its absence. I found myself smiling despite the circumstances. There was something compelling about Ibarra's quiet confidence, her absolute conviction in her cause. You should try to rest, she said, rising. Tomorrow will test all of us. As she moved to leave, I called after her. The people at my outpost, they were good soldiers. They deserved better. Ibarra paused at the doorway. Then let's make sure everyone knows exactly how they died, and why. It's the only justice we can offer them now. After she left, I remained on the observation deck, watching the stars slide by as the Valor carried us toward Manticore Station, and either vindication or destruction. Probably both. The Imperial shuttle bay loomed before us, a cavernous space designed to accommodate supply vessels and personnel transports. Our modified shuttle, its transponder, broadcasting the identification codes of a maintenance contractor, glided toward the designated docking port. Approach vector accepted, Lynn reported from the pilot's seat. They're not questioning our credentials. Nazari, suited up for combat beside me, checked his weapon one final time. Yet, our plan was simple in concept, complex in execution. Dock as a scheduled maintenance crew. Use my access codes to enter the station. Reach the central data core. Download the evidence of Operation Silence. Transmit it to the Valor. Escape before Imperial forces realized what had happened. Simple. I adjusted my borrowed combat suit, trying to ignore how vulnerable I felt without the familiar weight of an Imperial uniform. The others, Nazari, Lynn, and Specialist Park, moved with practiced efficiency. A well-oiled team that had clearly performed similar operations before. I was the unknown variable, the potential weak link. Docking complete, Lynn announced. Environmental sync in 3, 2, 1. The shuttle shuddered slightly as it locked into place against Manticore's hull. A moment later, green indicators confirmed that atmosphere and gravity had synchronized. Comms check, Nazari ordered, activating his helmet system. We each confirmed our channels were clear. Ibarra's voice came through from the Valor, now holding position at a safe distance. Remember, you have 45 minutes before the real maintenance crew is scheduled to check in. After that, all bets are off. Understood, Captain, Nazari replied. We're proceeding as planned. The airlock cycled open, revealing the sterile corridor of an Imperial facility, identical to countless others I'd served in over the years. Standard lighting, standard layout, standard security protocols. The familiarity was almost comforting, until I remembered what those standards now represented. I approached the first security terminal and input my credentials, half expecting alarms to immediately sound. Instead, the screen flashed green. Access granted. Welcome, Sergeant Reyes. They haven't deactivated you from the system, Park murmured. Either an oversight, or they're very confident no one survived the outpost attack. Or they're tracking us right now, Nazari countered grimly. Stay alert. We moved through the station's maintenance corridors, encountering few personnel. Manticore was primarily automated, with a skeleton crew for oversight and security. According to the schematics we'd studied, the central data core was 3 levels down, in the heart of the station. At the first junction, Lynn peeled off with Park. We'll establish the uplink from the communications hub, she confirmed. 30 minutes to rendezvous at the extraction point. Nazari and I continued downward, using service tunnels to avoid the main corridors. My heart pounded against my ribs, adrenaline sharpening every sense. This was familiar territory, intelligence operations behind enemy lines. Except now, the enemy was the government I'd sworn to protect. Security checkpoint ahead, Nazari warned, consulting his tactical display. 2 guards, standard rotation. I accessed the station systems through my portable terminal. I can trigger a diagnostic cycle in their sector. It'll freeze the security feeds for 90 seconds. Do it! My fingers flew across the interface, executing commands I'd learned during years of Imperial training. The irony wasn't lost on me. Now, we slipped past the checkpoint during the brief security blackout, descending further into Manticore's core. The air grew noticeably cooler as we approached the data center, climate control optimized for machinery rather than human comfort. There, Nazari pointed to a reinforced door at the end of the corridor. Core access. I approached the security panel, inputting my credentials once more. This time, the system hesitated. Additional authentication required. My pulse quickened. They've upgraded since the last intel. Can you bypass it? I studied the interface, mind racing. Not directly, but I pulled up the station's maintenance logs. There's a scheduled system update in progress. If I can piggyback on that protocol. Working quickly, I manipulated the authentication sequence, essentially convincing the system that our entry was part of the update procedure. After an agonizing 30 seconds, the panel flashed green. Access granted. Maintenance Protocol Alpha 69er in effect. The massive door slid open, revealing the heart of Manticore Station, a circular chamber dominated by data storage units and processing nodes. The combined systems hummed with quiet efficiency, blinking lights reflecting off polished surfaces. I need 3 minutes, I told Nazari, moving to the central terminal. Watch the door. As Nazari took up a defensive position, I connected my device to the main system and began the infiltration process. Imperial data architecture was labyrinthine by design, intended to confuse and delay unauthorized access. But I'd helped design some of these very systems during my time in intelligence. I knew their weaknesses, the backdoors that always existed for administrative purposes. Command override Reyes Victor 09, I murmured, typing the sequence. Authorization Zeta level. The system recognized my credentials that should have been deactivated upon my death at Outpost Zeta 9. Either the Empire's bureaucracy was slower than usual, or someone had deliberately kept my access active. Neither possibility was reassuring. I'm in, I reported, navigating through the classification levels. Searching for Operation Silence records now. Make it fast, Nazari urged. Lynn reports increased comms chatter. They might be onto us. I filtered through thousands of classified files, searching for the specific encryption markers that would identify Operation Silence documentation. When I found them, the sheer volume of data was staggering. Test results, casualty projections, planetary stability analyses, and most damning of all, the execution orders for surveillance outposts, including Zeta 9. Downloading now, I said, initiating the transfer to my device. A progress indicator appeared 10%, 15%, 20%. How much longer? Nazari demanded, tension evident in his voice. 2 minutes. Maybe less. I worked to compress the data, prioritizing the most crucial evidence. 35%. 40%. The station's alert system blared to life. Red warning lights pulsing throughout the core. Security breach detected. An automated voice announced. All personnel, secure stations. Security teams to level 3. We've been made, Nazari growled, readying his weapon. Can you speed it up? Working on it. 55%. 60%. I frantically bypassed secondary security protocols, forcing the system to release its hold on the classified files. 75%. The door to the core slid open. 2 security officers rushed in, weapons raised. Nazari fired before they could get off a shot, the suppressed pulse of his weapon dropping them both. More will be coming, he warned. We need to move. Almost there. 90%. 95%. Got it. The device chimed confirmation as the download completed. I disconnected from the terminal just as alarms shifted to a higher pitch. The station was going into lockdown. We need to reach the extraction point, I said, securing the precious data device inside my combat suit. Change of plans. Nazari's voice was tight. Lin reports Imperial forces converging on the docking bay. We need an alternate exit strategy. I pulled up the station schematic on my portable display. Emergency evacuation pods. Level 2. If we can reach them. Lead the way. We hurried from the data core, taking a maintenance shaft to avoid the main corridors, now swarming with security personnel. The station's internal comms crackled with alert messages and coordination orders. Attention all personnel. Security breach in progress. Intruders identified in Central Core. All units respond. Shoot to kill authorization confirmed. So much for plausible deniability. I caught Nazari's grim expression as we climbed upward through the access shaft. They're not taking chances, he observed. They can't afford witnesses, I replied. Not if what we've stolen is as damning as we think. We emerged on level 2, moving quickly toward the evacuation bay. The corridor ahead was clear, but voices echoed from an intersecting hallway, security teams converging on our position. In here, I hissed, dragging Nazari into a supply closet as a patrol rushed past. Once they'd gone, I checked my display again. Evacuation bay is 50 meters ahead. If we can... My words were cut short by the station's intercom system. Attention intruders. The voice was male, authoritative, and chillingly familiar from briefing recordings. This is Colonel Victor Vance. You have accessed classified Imperial materials. Your actions constitute high treason. Nazari and I exchanged glances. Vance himself was on the station. You are surrounded and outgunned, the colonel continued. Surrender now, and you will be granted a military tribunal rather than summary execution. Generous, Nazari muttered. The voice hardened. Sergeant Reyes, we know you are among the infiltration team. Your identification was confirmed at the first security checkpoint. This is your only chance for clemency. Surrender the stolen data, identify your collaborators, and your prior service record will be taken into consideration. My blood ran cold. They knew exactly who I was, had possibly known from the moment we docked. This wasn't just a security response. It was a trap. They were waiting for us, I whispered. Or waiting for someone, Nazari countered. They must have suspected the Valor would attempt to gather evidence. I thought rapidly. If they know who I am, they've been tracking my access credentials since we boarded. They probably have the evacuation bay locked down too. Options. I studied the station schematic, looking for alternatives. The observation deck, level 1. It has emergency vacuum protocols for hull breach scenarios. If we can trigger those protocols, we'd still be trapped. Not if the Valor is in position for extraction. I tapped my comm. Lin, Park, abort rendezvous. Proceed to extraction point Alpha. We're compromised. Already there, Lin's voice came back, tense but controlled. Imperial forces at the docking bay. We're pinned down. I made a quick decision. Captain Ibarra, are you monitoring? Go ahead, Sergeant, Ibarra's calm voice replied. Request emergency extraction, observation deck, level 1, hull breach protocol. There was a momentary pause. Understood. Position in 8 minutes. Can you hold that long? I glanced at Nazari, who nodded grimly. We'll have to. Reyes out. We moved cautiously from our hiding place, using service corridors to make our way upward toward the observation deck. Twice we were forced to engage security personnel, Nazari's precise shots ensuring they couldn't raise an alarm. Lynn, Park, change of plans. I transmitted. Meet us at the observation deck. We're going out the window. Copy that, Lynn responded. Moving now. As we approached the observation deck, the station's internal comms crackled again. All security units, converge on level 1. Repeat. All units to level 1. Intruders attempting to reach observation facilities. So much for the element of surprise, Nazari muttered. They were tracking our comms. I gestured to an access panel. We need to hurry. The panel led to a maintenance crawlway that opened directly onto the observation deck, a large, circular chamber with transparent viewports offering a panoramic view of space around the station. Under normal circumstances, it would be used for astronomical research and navigation calibration. Today, it would be our exit strategy. We emerged onto the deck to find it already occupied not by security forces, but by a single figure standing calmly before the main viewport. As he turned to face us, I recognized him immediately from intelligence briefings, Colonel Victor Vance, architect of Operation Silence, the man who had ordered the death of my entire unit. Sergeant Reyes, he greeted me, as if we were meeting at a military function, rather than in the midst of a high-stakes infiltration. I must admit, your survival was unexpected. A testament to your training, no doubt. Nazari raised his weapon, but Vance seemed unconcerned. I wouldn't, he advised. This deck is surrounded. Your companions from the communications hub are already in custody. My heart sank, but I kept my expression neutral. Is that why you're here alone to take credit for capturing us personally? Vance smiled thinly. I'm here to offer you one last opportunity. Sergeant, your service record suggests you're a pragmatist, someone who understands the necessity of sacrifice for the greater good. Is that what you call murdering an entire outpost of loyal Imperial personnel, sacrifice for the greater good? Precisely. He stepped closer, hands clasped behind his back. The weapons being tested in the neutral zone will ensure human dominance in this sector for generations. The elimination of a few hundred observers is a small price to pay for the security of trillions. You sound like you actually believe that, I said, disgust rising in my throat. Because it's true. The Empire cannot afford to be constrained by outdated ethical considerations or interstellar treaties. Not when our enemies are constantly seeking advantage. His gaze hardened. You've seen the files. You know the potential of this technology. Imagine it deployed against the rebellion. This war could be ended in days, rather than dragging on for years. By committing planetary genocide, by demonstrating overwhelming force, he corrected. Often, that's all that's required. While he spoke, I was acutely aware of the minutes ticking by. 6 minutes until the Valor would be in position. We needed to stall. And the cover-up, I pressed, blaming rebel forces for the destruction you ordered. Politics. Vance dismissed with a wave. The Imperial Council requires certain narratives to maintain public support. The truth would only cause unnecessary panic. The truth is that you're a mass murderer, I said flatly, and you're about to be exposed. For the first time, a flicker of anger crossed Vance's composed features. You haven't transmitted anything yet. Our systems would have detected it. Are you sure about that? I bluffed. Your security was lax enough to let us download your entire operation file. What makes you think we haven't already sent it to every news outlet in 3 sectors? Uncertainty crept into his expression. Security teams, he barked into his comm. Status of the intruder's transmission capabilities. While Vance was momentarily distracted, Nazari caught my eye and subtly indicated the environmental controls near the viewport. I gave an almost imperceptible nod, understanding his intent. "It's too late, Colonel," I said, raising my voice. "Operation Silence is about to become very, very loud." At that moment, the observation deck doors slid open. Lynn and Park were shoved through, hands bound, surrounded by armed security officers. Both showed signs of struggle. Lynn's face was bruised, and Park had a split lip. "Found these two trying to access the emergency evacuation systems," one of the officers reported. "They had this." He held up a data transmitter identical to the one still hidden inside my suit. Vance's confidence returned. "It seems your bluff has been called, Sergeant." He gestured to his men. "Secure them all. I want the data device recovered intact." As the security team moved to surround us, I caught Lynn's eye. She gave the slightest nod, a signal we'd agreed upon earlier. They'd managed to complete their part of the mission despite being captured. 4 minutes until extraction. "Colonel," I said, stepping forward with my hands raised. "Before you take us into custody, there's something you should know about Operation Silence." "And what might that be?" He regarded me with cold curiosity. "It has a fatal flaw." I moved closer to the viewport, drawing his attention. "You assumed that eliminating the observers would eliminate the evidence. But some things can't be silenced." Vance frowned. "What are you—" The station's alert system suddenly blared, cutting him off. Outside the viewport, the massive form of the Valor decloaked, weapon systems powering up. "Attention Manticore Station." Ibarra's voice echoed through the observation deck's comms. "This is Captain Santiago Ibarra of the independent vessel Valor. You are harboring war criminals responsible for the illegal destruction of Imperial Outpost Zeta-9 and the development of prohibited weapons of mass destruction." Vance's face contorted with fury. "All defense systems, target that vessel," he shouted into his comm. "You might want to reconsider that order, Colonel," I said calmly. "Captain Ibarra has just transmitted the complete Operation Silence files to the Interstellar News Network, the Galactic Tribune, and the offices of 17 planetary governors. They're being broadcast across the Empire as we speak. It was only partially a bluff. The transmission would be going out now, courtesy of Lynn and Park's work in the communications hub before their capture." "You're lying," Vance snarled, but doubt had crept into his voice. "Am I check your own communication logs? You'll find that an unauthorized data burst was transmitted approximately 10 minutes ago, while you were busy coordinating our capture. 2 minutes to extraction." Vance turned to his security team. "Verify." When one of the officers confirmed with a reluctant nod, the colonel's composed facade cracked completely. "Shoot them," he ordered. "All of them. Now." As the security team raised their weapons, Nazari made his move. In one fluid motion, he threw himself at the environmental control panel and activated the emergency protocols. "Warning, hull breach imminent," the station's automated system announced. "Vacuum protocols engaging. All personnel evacuate immediately." The observation deck's emergency shield began to descend, designed to isolate the section in case of viewport failure. The security team, caught by surprise, scrambled to escape before the shield sealed them in. "Hold your positions," Vance shouted, but self-preservation won out. His men fled, leaving him alone with us as the shield locked into place with a definitive clang. "What have you done?" Vance demanded, eyes wild with fury and fear. "Ensured you'll face justice," I replied, "along with everyone else involved in Operation Silence." Outside the viewport, the Valor maneuvered into position. 1 minute to extraction. "You'll die with me," Vance warned, drawing his sidearm. "This section will depressurize when the viewport is breached." "Our suits are vacuum-rated," Nazari informed him with grim satisfaction. "Yours isn't." Understanding dawned on Vance's face. "You can't do this." I'm a colonel in the Imperial forces. This is treason. No, I said quietly. This is justice for my comrades at Outpost Zeta 9, the ones you ordered executed to cover up your crimes. Before Vance could respond, a precision beam from the Valor struck the viewport, creating a small, controlled breach. The effect was immediate. Air rushed toward the opening, and alarms blared throughout the deck. Vance, unprepared for the sudden decompression, was thrown off his feet. Our magnetic boots activated automatically, anchoring us to the deck as the atmosphere vented into space. Through our helmet comms, I heard Ibarra's voice. Prepare for extraction. Deploying magnetic tether in 3, 2, 1. A metallic cable shot from the Valor, attaching to the observation deck's exterior structure. Lynn and Park, their restraints removed during the confusion, moved toward the breach point. "Hang on," Nazari shouted, as the viewport's structural integrity failed completely. The explosive decompression pulled us toward the opening exactly as planned. Our suits protected us from the vacuum as we were propelled into space, the magnetic tether guiding our trajectory toward the waiting Valor. The last thing I saw as we were pulled from the station was Colonel Vance, clawing desperately at the deck as the vacuum claimed him. His face was a mask of rage and disbelief, the expression of a man who never imagined he would face consequences for his actions. Then we were through, floating in the void between Manticore and the Valor. The ship's recovery team, secured by their own tethers, guided us into an open airlock. As the outer door sealed behind us and the chamber repressurized, I finally allowed myself to believe we might actually survive this mission. "Status," Ibarra demanded, as we removed our helmets in the safety of the Valor's interior. "Mission accomplished," I confirmed, retrieving the data device from my suit. "The evidence is secure, and the transmission went out as planned." Casualties. "Colonel Vance," Nazari reported, "caught in the decompression without proper equipment." Ibarra's expression remained neutral. "Unfortunate. The Interstellar Court would have preferred him alive for trial." "They'll have plenty of others to prosecute," Lynn noted, wincing as Dr. Voss examined her injuries. "The Operation Silence files implicate the entire War Council." "Set course for the rendezvous point," Ibarra ordered her bridge crew. "Maximum speed. We'll have Imperial pursuit vessels on our position within minutes." As if summoned by her words, the ship's tactical display lit up with multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace. "Imperial cruisers," the tactical officer reported. 4 vessels. Intercept course." "They're not pursuing," I realized, studying the display. "They're fleeing." Specialist Park, monitoring the communication channels, confirmed my suspicion. "Imperial Central Command is in chaos. The data transmission has gone viral across all networks. Multiple Imperial vessels are reporting commanders being relieved of duty or placed under arrest by their own crews." "It's working," Lynn breathed. "They're actually holding them accountable." Ibarra's face showed cautious optimism. "It's only beginning. There will be denials, cover-ups, attempts to discredit the evidence. But the truth is out there now. It can't be silenced again." I thought of my comrades at Outpost Zeta 9, of their lives, cut short by the callous calculation of men like Vance. It wasn't enough. Nothing could bring them back or fully atone for their murders. But it was something. A reckoning. A chance for their deaths to mean something beyond a convenient casualty statistic. "What happens now?" I asked, as the Valor accelerated away from Manticore Station, now diminishing to a bright speck against the darkness of space. "Now," Ibarra considered the question. "Now, we continue the work. There are other Operation Silence out there, other crimes being committed in the name of Imperial security. And now that the first domino has fallen..." She didn't need to finish the thought. The exposure of Operation Silence was just the beginning. The Empire would never be the same, and neither would I. 3 months later, I stood before the Interstellar Council, the final witness in the tribunal investigating the Operation Silence atrocities. The chamber was packed with representatives from across the galaxy, media drones hovering at the periphery, broadcasting my testimony to billions of viewers. Sergeant Reyes, the chief adjudicator, addressed me. Your evidence has been instrumental in establishing the facts of this case. Before we conclude, is there anything else you wish to add for the record? I looked out at the assembly diplomats, military officers, ordinary citizens who had demanded answers about what their government had done. In the months since our mission to Manticore Station, the Empire had undergone seismic changes. The entire War Council had been dissolved. Dozens of high-ranking officials faced charges. Reform movements had sprung up on countless worlds, demanding transparency and accountability. I would like to speak about the people of Outpost Zeta-9, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion behind my words. They weren't just casualties or statistics. They were soldiers who believed in their mission and trusted their leaders. They deserved better than to be sacrificed for political convenience. The chamber fell silent, hanging on every word. What happened to them, what almost happened to me, reveals a fundamental flaw in how power operates without accountability. When governments believe they can act with impunity, when they convince themselves that the ends justify any means, this is the inevitable result. I paused, gathering my thoughts. I don't speak today as a traitor to the Empire, but as someone who still believes in what the Empire was meant to be, a force for stability, protection, and human progress across the stars. The chief adjudicator nodded gravely. Thank you, Sergeant Reyes. Your courage in bringing this evidence forward will not be forgotten. As I stepped down from the witness stand, I caught sight of Captain Ibarra, now Admiral Ibarra, reinstated after the tribunal had cleared her of all charges of mutiny and theft. The Valor had been officially commissioned as part of a new oversight fleet, tasked with ensuring military transparency and adherence to interstellar law. Outside the tribunal chamber, Dr. Voss waited with the rest of the Valor's crew. Well done, he said as I joined them. How does it feel? Incomplete, I admitted. Justice doesn't bring anyone back. No, he agreed. But it honors their memory and prevents others from suffering the same fate. Ibarra approached, her expression thoughtful. The new fleet admiral has offered you reinstatement with promotion. I hear. Are you considering it? I had received the offer the previous day, full restoration of rank and privileges, with additional commendation for extraordinary service to imperial integrity. Part of me was tempted. It would be a way to continue serving the ideals I still believed in, to help reform the system from within. But another part of me remembered the silence of space as I drifted, abandoned by that same system. Remembered the cold calculation that had condemned my comrades to death. Some wounds couldn't be healed by promotions or medals. I've decided to decline, I told her. At least for now. She nodded, unsurprised. The Valor departs for the Outer Rim tomorrow. There are reports of another black site operation, possibly more abandoned personnel. A slight smile crossed her face. We could use an intelligence specialist. Is that a job offer, Admiral? Consider it an invitation to continue what we started. The truth doesn't expose itself. Sergeant Reyes, it needs people willing to seek it out, whatever the cost. I thought about the months since my rescue, the dangers we'd faced, the victories we'd won, the changes we'd helped create. I thought about the faces of my lost comrades, and the faces of others who might still be out there, abandoned like I had been, waiting for someone to remember they existed. When do we leave? I asked. Ibarra's smile widened. Welcome aboard, Mara. Again. As we walked away from the tribunal chambers, I gazed up at the vast dome overhead, where stars were just becoming visible in the evening sky. Somewhere out there, other signals waited to be heard, other truths needed uncovering. The work was far from over. But this time, I wouldn't be facing the void alone. This time, when the silence of space closed in, a human warship would roar through it carrying justice, carrying truth, carrying me home.